Winchester Mystery House.
In the heart of San Jose, California, stands a house like no other, a sprawling mansion built by a woman who, in her grief-stricken madness, created a labyrinthine nightmare. It's a house where the laws of architecture bend and twist into the supernatural, where doors lead to nowhere and stairs climb into the sky. This is the story of the Winchester Mystery House, a place steeped in mystery, tragedy, and a haunting legacy that endures to this day. In 1862, Sarah Lockwood Pardee was born in New Haven, Connecticut. Sarah was not destined for a life of mystery or madness. Her early years were filled with love and privilege, and she married the man she adored, William Wirt Winchester, heir to the Winchester Repeating Arms Company. The couple's life seemed to be one of fortune and happiness, the kind of life people only dream of. But the happiness that Sarah once knew was soon to unravel, piece by piece, at the hands of tragedy. In 1866, Sarah and William's first child, a daughter named Annie, died of a disease just a few weeks after birth. Sarah's sorrow was profound, but it was nothing compared to the grief that would come a few years later. In 1881, her beloved husband, William, died from tuberculosis, leaving Sarah a widow at just 50 years old. With William's death, she inherited a substantial fortune, close to $20 million, equivalent to hundreds of millions of dollars today, along with a large stake in the Winchester Repeating Arms Company. Though Sarah was wealthy, her grief was all-consuming. But as she mourned the loss of her family, something darker began to take hold of her. Sarah became obsessed with the idea of spirits, convinced that the souls of those who had been killed by the Winchester rifle, the very rifle manufactured by her late husband's company, were seeking vengeance upon her. This belief would soon lead Sarah to make a decision that would change her life and the fate of her house forever. In 1884, Sarah moved to the western United States, seeking refuge from the ghosts that haunted her. She purchased an unfinished farmhouse in San Jose, California, a place where she would begin construction on what would become the infamous Winchester Mystery House. The house itself was no ordinary building. It was a strange and sprawling mansion designed to keep the spirits of the dead at bay. No architect oversaw its construction. No plan or blueprint existed. It was a chaotic endeavor driven solely by Sarah's obsession with the supernatural. Each year, she would spend the vast fortune she had inherited on renovations and construction. The work was relentless, unceasing. Builders were hired and fired day after day, year after year. The house seemed to grow, expanding into a sprawling maze that defied the principles of logic and design. But Sarah was not interested in logic. She believed that by continuously building, she could appease the spirits and avoid their wrath. According to some accounts, she consulted with spiritualists and mediums who told her that she must never stop building. Otherwise, the spirits would come for her, and so construction continued unabated. But what began as a mansion soon transformed into something far more sinister. The house Sarah built was a labyrinth, a twisted masterpiece of design that confounded anyone who tried to make sense of it. There were staircases that led to nowhere, doors that opened to blank walls, and windows that looked out over nothing but other walls. The mansion seemed to grow in on itself, expanding without reason, creating a maze of corridors and rooms that went in every direction. It is said that the more Sarah built, the more the house began to take on a life of its own, as if the building itself was being shaped by the restless spirits she feared. Perhaps the most famous feature of the house is the stairway to nowhere, a grand staircase that begins on one floor and leads straight into the ceiling. It's a chilling symbol of the house's chaotic design, a reminder that nothing in the Winchester Mystery House follows the laws of reason or physics. It's as if the very fabric of reality begins to unravel here, as though the house is suspended between the living and the dead. The house was built in sections, each room, each corridor, a separate, isolated structure. No two rooms were alike, and nothing in the house seemed to make sense. One of the strangest features was the presence of doors that would open to brick walls or windows that didn't offer a view, but only the inside of another room. There were doors leading to nowhere, doors that opened only to empty spaces, and even a door at the top of a flight of stairs, only to reveal another stairway descending into the depths of the house. But the strangest of all the design choices was the placement of mirrors. Sarah believed that mirrors were portals to the spirit world, and she instructed that they be placed throughout the house in unusual locations. Some say the mirrors were meant to trap the spirits within the house, preventing them from escaping into the world of the living. Others claim that the mirrors were used to confuse the spirits, trapping them in endless reflections of themselves. As the house grew in size and complexity, so too did Sarah's obsession with the spirits that she believed were haunting her. The construction of the house wasn't just a means to protect herself. It was an attempt to control the supernatural forces that she feared. But as the years went on, the house itself seemed to become more than just a structure. The house began to take on an eerie life of its own. There are stories of strange occurrences in the house during its construction. Workmen would hear whispers in the walls, the sounds of footsteps echoing through the hallways at night. Others claimed to have seen shadowy figures moving through the mansion, disappearing into walls and hidden rooms. Many of the workers quit, citing supernatural occurrences that terrified them. Even Sarah herself began to feel the presence of the spirits she had sought to appease. At night, she would sit in a room filled with spirits, holding seances to communicate with the dead. She would claim that the spirits spoke to her, giving her instructions on how to continue building the house. And so she did, relentlessly, without pause. But despite all the construction, the spirits seemed never to be satisfied. Sarah's health began to decline, and her obsession deepened. She grew reclusive, refusing to leave the house, fearing that the spirits would find her and drag her away into the afterlife. It is said that she never slept in the same room the nights in a row, fearing that one of the spirits might come for her while she slept. Her mind began to unravel, just as the house itself did, and soon she was lost to her own madness. Sarah continued to live in the mansion for nearly 38 years, but in 1922, at the age of 83, she died, alone in the house she had built. Her death marked the end of an era for the Winchester Mystery House, but it was far from the end of the strange happenings that would come to define the mansion. After Sarah's death, the house was eventually sold, and it became a tourist attraction. Visitors came from far and wide to see the bizarre house that had been built in such a strange and erratic manner. but many who visited the house reported feeling a strange presence, an energy that seemed to hang in the air, as if the spirits of the dead still lingered within the walls. To this day, the Winchester Mystery House remains one of the most haunted places in the United States. Visitors and employees alike have reported strange occurrences, doors opening and closing by themselves, footsteps echoing through the halls, and lights flickering in the dead of night. Some claim to have seen the ghostly figure of Sarah Winchester herself, wandering the halls of the house, her spirit forever bound to the place she built in fear and madness. One of the most chilling aspects of the haunting is the seance room, a room that Sarah had built specifically for communicating with the spirits. Some say that when they sit in the room, they can feel an oppressive presence, as though the spirits are still watching them. Others claim to have heard disembodied voices speaking in the dark, the whispers of the dead seeking to make contact with the living. Perhaps the most unnerving of all is the fact that the house is still being renovated and maintained to this day. The house, much like Sarah herself, seems to refuse to die. It continues to grow, a living entity haunted by the ghost of its past. The Winchester Mystery House is more than just a house. It's a symbol of madness, obsession, and the dark consequences of trying to outrun the dead. It's a place where the boundaries between the living and the dead blur, where architecture and reality itself bend to the will of one woman's grief-stricken mind. And even now it stands as a testament to Sarah Winchester's unrelenting fear and her desperate attempts to appease the spirits that she believed were haunting her. But for all its eerie beauty and architectural oddities, the Winchester Mystery House remains a place of deep sorrow. It's a place where death and loss have left their mark, not just in the design of the house, but in the very air that lingers within its walls. To walk through the mansion today is to step into a world where the past is never truly gone, and where the spirits of the dead still roam, waiting to be acknowledged. As night falls over the mansion, the wind whispers through the trees, and the shadows of the past stretch long across the house. The spirits of the Winchester Mystery House are still here, waiting, and perhaps, just perhaps, they are still seeking the vengeance that Sarah Winchester feared all those years ago. The house may have been finished, but the mystery and the terror remains.
Optical illusion.
Rio loved browsing social media during her breaks. The endless scroll of curated photos, memes, and videos felt like a relaxing escape from her routine as a graphic designer. She considered herself a skeptic, the kind of person who didn't fall for clickbait or internet challenges. That's why when she came across a viral post about an optical illusion that promised to reveal something strange, she scoffed. The post showed an intricate black and white spiral with the caption, "Stare at this for 30 seconds and tell us what you see. But beware. Once you see it, you can't unsee it." Curious, Rio stared at the spiral. At first, it was just a mesmerizing swirl, but as she focused, she thought she saw something flicker, a shadowy figure. She blinked, laughed it off, and moved on. It was just an optical illusion, after all. That evening, as Rio left her office, she felt an unusual heaviness in the air. The sidewalk stretched long and dimly lit, lined by sparse streetlights and encroaching shadows from nearby buildings. She shrugged off the unease, telling herself she was tired. As she neared the side road passage she took every night, something caught her eye. Across the street, in the dim light, a tall, pitch-black figure stood motionless. Its form was devoid of detail, like a human silhouette cut out of reality. But the most unsettling thing was its eyes, pinpricks of white light that seemed to pierce through her. Rio's heart quickened. She rationalized that it was a trick of the light or her imagination playing games after a long day. She kept walking, determined not to look back. The figure didn't follow, or so she thought. The next day, Rio tried to laugh about it with her co-worker Jenna. "I think I'm working too hard," she joked. "I thought I saw a shadow person or something on my way home." Jenna raised an eyebrow. "Shadow person? That's creepy. You've been watching too many horror movies." Rio chuckled, but couldn't shake the unease. That evening, as she walked home, she glanced toward the side road passage. The figure was there again, closer this time. It stood near the curb, its unblinking eyes following her as she passed. Her stomach churned, but she quickened her pace, refusing to let fear take over. Over the next few days, the sightings became more frequent. The figure appeared in various places along her route, each time closer than before. On the fifth night, it stood directly in her path. Rio froze, her breath catching in her throat. For a moment, she thought she could hear something, a faint, low hum, like a distant whisper. She stepped to the side and hurried past, her heart hammering in her chest. By now, Rio was certain this was no coincidence. She tried to avoid the side road passage, taking alternate routes home, but it didn't matter. The figure appeared no matter where she went, always in her peripheral vision, always closer. The oppressive feeling of being watched grew unbearable. One night, as she rounded a corner, she realized with a sinking dread that the figure wasn't there. The absence was somehow more terrifying. She walked faster, her senses on high alert. When she dared to glance over her shoulder, she gasped. The figure was right behind her, inches away. Its eyes bored into hers, and before she could scream, everything went black. When Rio woke, she was disoriented. She wasn't in her bed or even on the sidewalk. She was standing in the side road passage, but something was wrong. The world felt inverted, the shadows were too deep, the air too still. As she tried to orient herself, she noticed movement on the opposite sidewalk. It was her. She saw herself walking down the street, headphones in, head tilted slightly in thought, exactly as she'd been moments before she passed out. Her other self paused, sensing something, and turned to look directly at her. Their eyes met, and Rio's blood ran cold. Her other self recoiled. The look of fear and horror on her own face was unmistakable. What is this?" Rio whispered, her voice trembling. She tried to step forward, but her body wouldn't move. She felt anchored to the spot where the black figure had always stood. It hit her then. She was the figure. She tried to scream, to call out to her other self, but no sound came. Her perspective shifted, her vision narrowing until all she could see were the glowing eyes, her eyes reflected in the terror-stricken face of the person she once was. Days passed, or perhaps years. Time had no meaning in this state. Rio watched as her other self went about life, increasingly haunted by the sightings. She saw herself looking over her shoulder, losing sleep, trying to confide in friends who dismissed her fears. And every night, Rio stood in the shadows, unable to move, unable to warn her past self of the fate that awaited her. The cycle continued, an endless loop of fear and inevitability. Rio realized the truth. The optical illusion had been more than a trick. It was a doorway, a trap, and now she was part of it. On the first night of her entrapment, Rio fought to understand what had happened. Her mind raced as she replayed every moment. The optical illusion, it had to be the catalyst. But why? Was it a curse, some twisted experiment? There were no answers, only the growing dread of eternity in this void. Hours stretched into days, and Rio's thoughts became fragmented. She couldn't interact with the world, but she could observe. She watched her other self, the real Rio, struggle to maintain normalcy. Her past self's bright eyes were dimmed by exhaustion, her laughter strained. The world began to mirror her descent, colors fading, shadows lengthening. Then came the whispers. At first, they were faint, like distant voices carried on the wind. But as the days passed, they grew louder, more distinct. Words formed, cruel and mocking. You're nothing, you belong here. It's your fault. Rio's sanity unraveled further. She screamed into the void, clawed at her invisible prison, begged for mercy. No one answered. Meanwhile, the real Rio became obsessed with the figure. She searched for explanations, online forums, paranormal podcasts, anything that could offer a clue. One night, she stumbled across a thread about the optical illusion. The comments chilled her, saw the figure after staring at it. It's always there now, one user wrote. It's like it's alive. Gets closer every day, said another. And then the final comment. If you see its eyes up close, it's already too late. Rio slammed her laptop shut. She tried to convince herself it was nonsense. But deep down, she knew better. Months passed in the void. Rio's perception of time warped. Her existence was a blur of fear and longing. Then, one night, a change. Her real self stared at the spiral on her phone, just as she once had, and as her past self passed the side road passage. She froze, her gaze locking onto the figure standing in the shadows. Rio's heart sank as she realized what would happen next. Her other self quickened her pace, refusing to look back. But no matter how far she ran, the figure, Rio, would always be waiting. The loop continued, the terror perpetuated, and the spiral claimed its next victim, ensuring Rio's nightmare would never end.
The holiday tradition.
The holiday spirit blanketed the streets of the Philippines in a vibrant glow of paroles and sparkling lights. Gloria and Carlos, with their 3 children, Cora, Kaike, and Kel, were on the road visiting their ninongs and ninangs to ask for blessings, a cherished Filipino tradition. Their old sedan rattled as it sped down the highway. Carlos hummed along to a Christmas carol on the radio, his fingers tapping the steering wheel. Kel, the youngest, sat in the back, clutching a stuffed carabao toe, while Kaike, the middle child, played games on her phone. Cora, the eldest, scrolled through social media, only half engaged with the family chatter.
Next stop, Ninong Frederico.
Gloria announced cheerily. Cora frowned.
Do we really have to? He creeps me out.
Cora?
Gloria scolded.
He's your Ninong. He's been so kind to us all these years. Show some respect.
Carlos nodded in agreement.
He's alone now. Anak, it's Christmas. Imagine how lonely it must be for him.
Reluctantly, Cora sank deeper into her seat, muttering.
Fine.
As the car pulled up to Ninong Frederico's house, an eerie silence hung over the place. The sprawling old home, nestled at the edge of a forest, loomed like a forgotten relic. The windows glinted dully, and the garden was overgrown with weeds. Yet, as the family approached the door, it swung open, revealing a frail, smiling man.
Merry Christmas.
Ninong Frederico greeted, his voice raspy but warm. His thin frame seemed too small for his oversized barong, but his eyes sparkled with excitement.
Come in,
He urged, ushering them inside. The house smelled faintly of damp wood and something else, something metallic and sour. The walls were lined with old photographs, some so faded they were barely recognizable. Frederico's hospitality was impeccable. He showered the family with stories of his youth, served them by mikaiketsuchannelyt, and gifted each child a small envelope with money. But as the night wore on, the family decided it was time to leave.
It's getting late,
Gloria said, gathering the children. Carlos nodded.
We should head home before midnight.
But as they stepped outside, Carlos noticed something alarming. The car wouldn't start. He checked under the hood and found the gas tank completely empty.
That's impossible.
Carlos muttered, scratching his head.
I filled it up before we left.
Frederico appeared behind him, seemingly out of nowhere.
The nearest gas station is in the next town. You won't make it tonight. Why don't you stay here? I have plenty of room.
Carlos hesitated, but Gloria chimed in.
it's late. The kids are tired, let's just stay the night.
And so they stayed. Frederico insisted on cooking them a late dinner, and the family, grateful for his generosity, sat at the dining table. The room was dimly lit by a single chandelier, its light flickering faintly. When Frederico brought out a steaming pot of menudo, the family eagerly served themselves. The dish was rich and fragrant, with chunks of meat swimming in a thick, reddish-brown sauce. Kel, the youngest, was the first to notice.
Something's moving in my bowl,
he said, poking at the meat with his spoon.
Don't be rude.
Kaike hissed, nudging him.
but I saw it.
Cal, stop it.
Gloria said firmly. Embarrassed, Kel picked at his food while the rest of the family began to eat. But as they chewed, an odd expression crossed their faces. The meat was tender, but the taste was off, metallic, almost. Cora pushed her plate away.
I'm not that hungry,
she said. Frederico chuckled.
It's an old family recipe. I hope you enjoyed.
Gloria forced a polite smile and continued eating, though her stomach churned with unease. After dinner, Frederico showed them to the guest rooms. The house creaked and groaned as they walked, the old wooden floors protesting under their weight.
You'll be safe here.
Frederico assured them, his smile lingering just a bit too long. The family settled into their rooms, the children sharing one, while Gloria and Carlos took another. The night stretched on, quiet and still, save for the occasional rustle of leaves outside. But Cora couldn't sleep. The taste of the menudo lingered on her tongue, and her unease grew with every passing minute. She decided to get some water from the kitchen. As she tiptoed down the hall, she heard something, a faint, muffled sound, like a whimper, curious and slightly afraid. Cora followed the nose. It led her to a door at the end of the hall. Slightly ajar, she peered inside and froze. The room was dimly lit, but she could make out the figure of Federico hunched over something. On the floor lay a pile of bones, picked clean, and next to it, a butcher's knife glinted in the light. Federico was humming a Christmas carol as he worked, his hands slick with blood. Cora stifled a gasp and backed away, her heart pounding. She turned to run, but bumped into something solid. "Federico,"
Going somewhere, dear?
he asked, his voice low and menacing. Chaos erupted. The family scattered, trying to escape, but the house was a maze of locked doors and dark corners. Federico moved with a terrifying speed, his frail appearance belying his strength. In the kitchen, Gloria armed herself with a cast-iron pan, while Carlos grabbed a chair leg. The children huddled together, their cries echoing through the house.
You should have stayed in the city.
Federico taunted, his voice carrying through the halls.
But now you're here, and you'll make a fine feast for my next guests.
The family fought valiantly, but Federico was relentless. He cornered them one by one, his knife flashing in the dim light. By morning, the house was silent. The faint smell of menudo lingered in the air as the sun rose over the forest. Federico sat at the dining table, humming a Christmas carol as he prepared breakfast. On the table were bowls of steaming menudo, the meat tender and succulent. Outside, a new family arrived, their car pulling into the driveway. Federico greeted them with open arms.
Merry Christmas,
he called out, his smile wide and welcoming.
The firecracker.
The streets of Hong Kong sparkled with anticipation as New Year's Eve approached. Vibrant red and gold banners lined the bustling markets, firecracker stands dotted the sidewalks, and the smell of roasted chestnuts and tangy fish balls wafted through the cool winter air. Among the throng of excited children was Chan, an 8-year-old beau, with an unquenchable fascination for fireworks. Chan's eyes lit up every time he saw the colorful burst of light and heard the sharp crackle that echoed through the alleys. He spent every spare moment collecting fireworks from street vendors, saving his allowance for the bright explosives that painted the sky. The louder, the better, he would exclaim to his friends, clutching a stash of firecrackers in his small hands. His mother often scolded him, warning him to be careful, but Chan's curiosity always overruled caution. One chilly afternoon, as Chan wandered near a park on the outskirts of the city, he stumbled upon an anthill. The mound was sizable, teeming with ants scurrying in and out. A mischievous idea sparked in his mind. What if I put fireworks inside, he thought, giggling to himself. The thought of a tiny explosion sending ants flying amused him to no end. Chen carefully inserted a firecracker into the anthill and lit the fuse. He backed away just in time to watch the tiny explosion erupt, scattering soil and ants everywhere. The insects crawled in frantic, chaotic patterns, their home obliterated. Chen clapped his hands, amused by the scene, and dashed back home before anyone could catch him. That night, Chen fell asleep with a sense of triumph. He dreamed of fireworks illuminating the sky, each burst brighter and louder than the last. But his dreams took a dark turn. He saw shadows crawling, whispering in a language he couldn't understand, their voices rising in a haunting cacophony. The shapes grew closer, their forms shifting and undulating like waves of ants, until they enveloped him completely. When he awoke, something was off. His ears buzzed faintly, like a faraway hum. He shook his head, thinking it was just leftover noise from the fireworks. But as the day progressed, the buzz turned into a muffled silence. By evening, Chen couldn't hear anything at all. His parents grew concerned, but they chalked it up to an infection and promised to visit a doctor after the New Year's celebrations. Chen's hearing loss was only the beginning. That night, as the fireworks crackled outside, he heard something else, whispers. They were faint at first, like the rustling of leaves, but as midnight approached, they grew louder and more sinister. "Why did you do it?" they hissed. "Why did you destroy?" Terrified, Chen covered his ears, but the whispers only grew stronger, drilling into his mind. His cries of fear brought his parents to his room, but they couldn't understand his frantic explanations. They only saw their son trembling, his face pale with terror. By the next morning, Chan's vision began to blur. He rubbed his eyes repeatedly, but the world around him grew dimmer. His parents rushed him to a hospital, but the doctors were baffled. Tests revealed nothing, and Chan's condition worsened by the hour. Swollen bumps began to appear on his face and body, red and pulsating as if alive. His mother wept as she dabbed at his forehead with a damp cloth, helpless to ease his suffering. The whispers continued, now accompanied by an unbearable itch beneath his skin. Chan's nails left bloody trails as he scratched desperately, trying to rid himself of the crawling sensation. At night, he swore he could feel tiny legs moving beneath his flesh, writhing and burrowing deeper. His parents' fear turned to desperation, and they sought help from every source they could find. A neighbor suggested visiting a local mystic, an elderly woman known for her knowledge of the spiritual world. Reluctantly, Chan's parents carried their son to her tiny, incense-filled shop. The woman examined Chan with a grim expression, her bony fingers tracing the bumps on his arms. Her face grew darker with every moment. "He has angered a spirit," she said gravely. "Not just any spirit, but the guardian of the earth and its smallest creatures. The ants are sacred, their colonies a delicate balance of life. To destroy one without cause is to invoke wrath. He must make amends or the punishment will continue." Chan's parents begged for a solution, but the mystic shook her head. "The spirit's wrath is fierce. The only way to appease it is to show true remorse and rebuild what was destroyed." Despite his deteriorating condition, Chan and his parents returned to the park. The boy, now nearly blind and covered in grotesque growths, knelt by the remains of the anthill. His fingers dug into the soil, trembling as he tried to restore the mound. Tears streamed down his face as he whispered apologies, his voice barely audible. But it was too late. That night, the whispers turned into screams. Chan's body convulsed as the bumps erupted, releasing hundreds of tiny black ants. The insects swarmed his room, their movements eerily synchronized as they climbed the walls and ceiling. Chan's parents burst into the room, horrified by the sight of their son writhing in agony. They tried to pull him from the bed, but the ants covered every inch of his body, their sharp mandibles biting and tearing at his flesh. By dawn, Chen was gone. His bed was empty, save for a pile of soil and a single firecracker lying at its center. The New Year's celebrations continued in Hong Kong, but Chen's neighborhood was shrouded in unease. Whispers spread about the boy who vanished, and some claimed to hear faint crackles of fireworks near the park at night, accompanied by the scuttling of countless tiny legs. Chan's story became a cautionary tale, a grim reminder of the unseen forces that linger in the world. As the years passed, parents warned their children not to play recklessly with fire or disturb the delicate balance of nature. And every New Year's Eve, amidst the dazzling fireworks, some swore they could see a shadowy figure in the distance, its small hands clutching a sparkler, watching in silence. The park became a place of unease, its boundaries marked by fear. Even in the daylight, there was an unnatural stillness. Ants moved in strange formations, their paths spelling out symbols that no one could decipher. At night, those brave enough to venture close claimed to hear whispers, faint but unmistakable, calling for balance, for respect. One particularly bold teenager decided to test the legend, lighting a string of firecrackers near the park's edge. The explosions echoed through the night, but instead of laughter, there was silence. Then, from the darkness, came the unmistakable hum of crawling insects. The teenager fled, his screams lost in the night, leaving only a trail of discarded firecrackers behind. Chan's parents, consumed by grief, left the neighborhood shortly after his disappearance. Their home stood vacant, a haunting reminder of the tragedy. The park remained untouched, its secrets buried beneath the soil, waiting for another curious soul to disturb its fragile peace. Every New Year's Eve, as the clock struck midnight and fireworks lit up the sky, the people of Hong Kong couldn't help but glance toward the park, wondering if the spirit was watching, waiting for someone else to tip the scales.
The Squid's Game?
In the quiet outskirts of a rural Korean village, nestled between dark forests and mist-covered hills, there stood an old playground. Its faded swings creaked in the wind, and the merry-go-round spun aimlessly, as though moved by unseen hands. The centerpiece of the playground, however, was an enormous drawing of a squid etched into the dirt. Rumor had it that the Squid Game, once a lively children's pastime, held a sinister history. It started innocently enough. A group of 8 children decided to play the Squid Game one overcast afternoon. Among them was Ji-hoon, a shy boy with a nervous disposition. The others teased him for always being the first to lose. But this time, Ji-hoon was determined to win. As they took their places on the squid's head and body, a strange hush fell over the playground. The wind stopped, and the air grew thick and stifling. Ji-hoon's skin prickled as if unseen eyes were watching. They began the game, laughter masking an undercurrent of unease. But then it happened. Ji-hoon had just crossed into the squid's body when he froze. His wide eyes darted around, and his lips trembled as if he were trying to scream. Then, before anyone could react, his body twisted unnaturally, and with a bone-chilling pop, he disappeared into thin air. The others screamed, scrambling away from the squid drawing. Some ran to fetch their parents, but the moment they crossed outside the playground's boundary, they too vanished. The remaining children huddled together, crying and calling for help. One by one, the squid drawing seemed to consume them, its crude lines glowing faintly with an ominous red hue. By nightfall, the playground was empty. No footprints remained, no sign that the children had ever been there. Days turned into weeks, and the village was gripped by grief and confusion. Parents searched Tirelessly, police combed the area, but there was no trace of the missing children. The playground became a forbidden zone, roped off and abandoned, its eerie silence a haunting reminder of the tragedy. Yet the village's youngest could not resist the pull of the mystery. They whispered to one another about seeing shadowy figures near the playground at night, hearing faint laughter carry on the wind. It was Mina, a brave and headstrong 12-year-old who decided to investigate. She had lost her younger brother, Doan, to the Squid Game incident and was determined to uncover the truth. Armed with a flashlight and a recorder, she snuck out one moonless night. The playground loomed ahead, a dark void against the starlit sky. Mina's steps faltered as she neared the squid drawing. Its lines, once faint and smudged, now seemed freshly etched, as if someone had drawn them anew. She crouched by the edge, heart pounding, and pressed record. Doan, she called, her voice trembling. A whisper answered, soft and distant. Come play. Mina's breath caught in her throat. The voice was unmistakably her brother's. Doan, where are you? She cried, stepping onto the squid's head. The air turned frigid, and a thick fog rolled in, enveloping the playground. Shapes began to form within the mist, small, shadowy figures with hollow eyes and twisted smiles. They circled Mina, their laughter echoing like nails on glass. Play with us, they chanted in unison. Mina recognized their faces, her brother Ji-hoon and the others who had disappeared, but they were no longer children. Their eyes glowed crimson, and their limbs moved like marionettes controlled by an unseen force. Terrified, Mina turned to run, but the ground beneath her feet rippled like liquid. The squid's lines burned bright red, and Mina stumbled, falling onto the tail. The figures closed in, their hands cold and clawed as they dragged her toward the center of the squid's body. No, stop, she screamed, thrashing against their grip. Their laughter grew louder, more distorted, as if 100 voices were layered atop one another. The fog thickened, and Mina's vision blurred. She felt herself sinking, the ground swallowing her whole. When she awoke, Mina was no longer in the playground. She stood in a vast, endless void, the ground beneath her a pulsating, fleshy mass. The air reeked of decay, and grotesque shapes writhed in the darkness. Before her stood a towering figure, its form a twisted amalgamation of human and squid. Its many eyes glowed, and its tentacles writhed hungrily. Welcome, it hissed, its voice reverberating in Mina's skull. You've brought me another feast. Mina realized too late that she had been lured here, just like the others. The creature fed on the children's fear, their innocence, using the squid game as bait. She screamed as the tentacles reached for her, dragging her into its gaping maw. The next morning, the playground appeared as it always had, silent and empty. But the squid drawing seemed darker, its lines more vivid. Children continued to disappear, drawn by the whispers and laughter that beckoned them to play. The villagers, paralyzed by fear and superstition, abandoned the area entirely. The playground became a cursed ground, a haunting reminder of the lives it had claimed. But the whispers never stopped, and the squid, ever hungry, waited for its next victim. Thank you for tuning in. Please leave a like and subscribe. I will see you again next week.